Welcome to this episode of Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. I'm Paula Eddie Wilcox, and I'm delighted to welcome our guest for the second time, where we're looking at their take on the game and leadership aspect of the podcast. Who knows what we might find out, because we all look at this differently, and it's always so interesting to see what the guests have in store for me when I turn up, because we never plan this in advance. So I hope you're as excited as me. Let's get into it, and I'll see you on the other side. Welcome to this week's episode of Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. I'm Paula Eddie Wilcox, and I'm delighted to be joined again for our second episode with Jimmy Burroughes. Hello.
Hello, Paula. Good to see you again. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Excellent. Well, look, we dug into so much in the first episode that my brain's going bananas with all the things that we might dig into on the next two episodes with you, Jimmy. It's been fascinating already, and I know our listeners will be just getting so much wisdom and so many sort of leadership learning gems from our conversation. So I'm always intrigued, because this is one of my favourite episodes, because as we know, it's called Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. So I'm always super curious to understand what game and leadership means to all the different folks I've had join me. It's been a real privilege to get an insight into what the idea of game and leadership together conjures up. You know, people think that maybe they don't go together at all. Other people are like, yeah, that means this for me. So over to you, Jimmy. I'll stop wittering on and let's hear what your thoughts are.
It's the most beautiful metaphor, I think, to start a conversation, the game of leadership. And you know, if we look at the way we do our best play, it's generally by being creative, by being imaginative, by being curious, by trying things and falling flat on our faces, or trying things and then working out and then learning from that experience to play better. But in business, we don't seem to play very much, do we? We take it all very seriously, but the consequences and the situations that we seem to make for ourselves are extremely non-playful. And we remove all aspects of that from the game of leadership as well. So the way we lead people becomes very serious and very non-playful. And, you know, I think back to some of the conversations I have with my coach, an incredible guy called James Wedmore. And he always talks about just holding it a little bit more lightly when you're running a business. And by that, he means, you know, don't be so serious, because when you become serious, you also remove a lot of the opportunity, a lot of the upside, a lot of the joy, a lot of the fun of being a leader. We take it all too seriously. And in the world that we're playing in right now, which is probably feeling like quite a serious, scary place, leaders have, I believe, an obligation, a responsibility, but also an opportunity to bring a bit of playfulness and game back to the teams that they lead and run. And the other thing that really comes to mind for me is many moons ago, I did a gamification qualification to gamify business processes. Yeah. And it was super fascinating, because you're essentially applying the principles of Super Mario Brothers to business, you know, levels and bosses and challenges and points and leaderboards and all of these things. But one of the biggest lessons in the program was gamified principles, if when applied badly, can actually do more damage than good, because people become fixated on what we call extrinsic motivators. So the outside stuff, so the bonuses, and your bonuses are your prizes, your promotions are your levels, what you can use the analogy across. And actually what we want to do is really get inside people and lead them from their hearts, because we want the intrinsic motivators to be the things that make them play the game more effectively. And that intrinsic motivator, more often than not in great cultures, is curiosity, is fun, is winning because it's fun to play with others, is playing well with others, is sharing, is talking, all these amazing things that are the game of business, but we forget them because we're playing the game of profit instead.
Oh, so much in there, Jimmy, and I love that idea of holding things more lightly. What a lovely way for your coach to share that knowledge with you, for you to then share that with the listeners, because I think that's really helpful. I think, and I'm certainly guilty of it sometimes. I do take myself too seriously sometimes. And some of the work that I've done recently has really helped me to, I think the right term is loosen up a bit. I'm actually quite a creative person, but I can often be heard saying, "Oh, I'm not very creative." And yet, when you get me in the right situation, talking with the right people, I've come up with all sorts of stuff. So it's giving yourself that opportunity and, taking off the blinkers almost, that actually, if we put ourselves in the right situations and don't take all this stuff so seriously around us, we are capable of all sorts of different things that then open up, and you use this word opportunity, so many different opportunities that we didn't previously, well, either weren't privy to, didn't realize they were there, or just hadn't even thought about. And I know that it's certainly, for me, made life so much easier, because actually what it's done is remove a lot of the pressure. Does that make sense to you?
Oh, I mean, while you was talking, I had this immediately this example come to mind of one of the clients I work with is a very successful construction business based in the UK. And I've been working with the managing director now for nearly 4 years in various different guises. But over that period of time, his business has significantly grown, and his leadership style has developed beyond belief. So he was a very good operations manager when we met. Now he's almost becoming a chairman. And so that shift has been quite spectacular. And one of the conversations we had last week when we were meeting up was, he realized that when he was being an operations manager, he was the hamster on the wheel, and he was playing the small game. And since over the last couple of years, we've restructured the business, we've built the team, we've organized how the operations of the business are running more effectively. But most of all, we've taken things off his plate. So where he used to be the one writing the task list in the morning, now he has a person who takes care of that. He's empowered people around him to play a bigger game for themselves.
Yeah.
But his big observation was, I was always consumed, all my mental energy was consumed doing all the things. And now I sit in the garden with my girls and I enjoy the sunshine. And then suddenly I'll think of a new prototype for a new building structure, or I'll be headed to he's a great gym person. So he's like, I'll be headed to CrossFit. And as I'm driving in the car, instead of being on the phone talking to a client or dealing with an issue, I'll be thinking about how can we prefabricate that, or how could we organize that in a more efficient way. So he's playing a much bigger game because he's got the headspace. And when you start to play a different game, suddenly the results change, and you can win a much bigger game by playing a bigger game. If you're playing the small game, you're only ever going to get small wins.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And just hearing you talking there, you were saying, but just going on to the task list for the day, for example, you said, he's now got somebody that does that for him to increase the game that they're playing as well. So it's created an opportunity for that other person to then move into a space that they thought they might never be able to move into, because they always knew the big boss took care of that, and Absolutely. It wasn't their area of influence or responsibility. So all of this this sort of gameplay, if you like, enables us to empower others, to give opportunities for that self-development. And people are well, you'll know if they're hungry for that development, because they'll be grabbing at it with both hands, you know, grabbing at the opportunity with both hands to take it forwards and make it their own. And I can honestly say, when you start handing that stuff over, it's such a massive relief. Like,
Yeah.
what was I doing previously? You know, and I'm sure you get this with your clients. I certainly do with mine, you know, when we talk about that ability to be able to delegate, because a lot of people really struggle with that. You know, I had a guest a few weeks ago, Jimmy, this will resonate with you. They said, you know, when we get promoted, we think we have to become these super doers and do all the things now, instead of the little portion that we had when we were the one reporting into the person that we're now becoming. We then think we need to be doing all the things to deliver a great job. But actually,
Often that happens, yeah, especially in leadership transition. And again, what I see is that leadership transition from leader to leader of leaders, or leader of leaders to enterprise leader. So what often happens is we carve our sense of success out of being the extreme deliverer. Where even if we're leading a team, often we're still the most talented person in that particular area, or we're known for something. And the further up the organization you go, when you become leader of leader or enterprise leaders, actually the what you do is very, it starts to become less important, and the how you achieve results becomes far more important. And often we'll say to these people, you know, how did you get where you are? By hard work. And we say, and also presumably somebody gave you an opportunity to step up and shine at some point. And they're like, well, yeah, you know, there's a mentor, or somebody promoted me, somebody took a risk on me, or whatever it was. Cool. So why are you depriving the people around you of that? And 9 times out of 10, it comes down to because the person, because now I'm responsible for doing these things and I'm good at doing those things. And even though I've got these extra new responsibilities, it's much easier for me at times to go back to the things I'm good at, the things I'm comfortable at, or the things that made me famous. So I can't let go of those, which is why I'm overwhelmed and burning out. So the light bulb moment is, well, somebody gave you a chance to shine for you to be able to get promoted. And if you create some space by giving somebody else a chance to shine, what is going to flow into that gap? You know, energy is always flowing. So if you give a little bit of that stress away in the form of a delegation or development opportunity, you create a vacuum for something to come to you that's going to allow you to grow and shine to the next layer, just like it did last time in your career. And when that little light bulb goes on, then people suddenly go, oh, okay, then maybe I can think differently about it. But until that point, generally the ego is holding on to it. You meet so many leaders. I'm sure you found the same thing. You meet so many leaders so busy, and you're like, cool, so just stop doing half that stuff. Oh no, I couldn't possibly, because it's all super important and very urgent.
Yeah.
All right.
And also very important, of course. Let's not forget that.
Yeah, it's not to be disrespectful in any way to those people, but we all do it. We all believe all of our work is essential, all of it's important, all of it's urgent, and we're the only people that can do it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And you know, it is said with love and with respect, you know, all of this that we're sharing, because, you know, well, I said it earlier, you know, I've been guilty of doing this stuff in the past. Learning how to be able to let go and move on, and you know, by then allowing somebody else to push out their comfort zone and try something new that you were previously doing, allows you then to start pushing outside of your comfort zone and start doing something different to help you learn and grow. And that's where the magic happens, when you're in that learning and that growth zone, because you know, you are getting to do completely different things that, you know, a year ago, or 2 years ago, let's say, as an example, I never thought I'd be doing my own podcast. I thought it was fascinating. I thought it was amazing. I really wanted to do it. And how could I ever do a podcast? You know, but you find a way to make these things happen if you really want to do it. You know, it's the same in that sort of leadership space. Well, okay, I was leading myself in my business and what have you, but in that sort of traditional leadership space in corporate, if you like, you know, a year ago, I might not have seen myself as leading a program and a team of people doing X, Y, and Z. But now a year on, here I am a year into the role, and all of this stuff's happening, and so on. And now we're at the stage of thinking about, well, how do we change that? What's coming up for the team? What are all these development opportunities? What does that mean for everything that we need to do? That prioritizing piece, all of this great stuff that comes up when you're going through that sort of development for yourself. And I think, I released I think it was like a 1 minute 12-second video the other day on LinkedIn that was just around saying to people, when was the last time you focused on yourself and just did a bit of self-development? Just think about that for a minute. And then the fact that nobody's as interested in your self-development as you are.
100%.
And unless you commit to and then take the action to develop in whatever it is you're interested in, whether it's something outside of the team or the department that you're currently in. So how can you make those connections with other people so you can start finding out, in terms of what do I need to do to go and play? Let's use that analogy. What do I need to do now to go and be able to play over there where I'd really like to have a go, because I think I've got some value to add and what have you. And we're so driven and I talked about being boxed in earlier with the day-to-day activities that we think we've got to deliver, the expectations in our role and from senior leadership and bottom line KPIs, all those things that we have to pay attention to. Life's so full of all that stuff coming in that it's really, really hard to carve out the time to focus on you. And
it really is. And you and to give, for fear of giving advice, because I don't like to give advice, but certainly from experience working on this extensively in the last 6 years and doing a lot of deep inner work, you can't do all of this stuff at once. You can't fix your life in one move.
No.
The phrase we use in group coaching sessions is, where you're feeling the tension is the place to pay attention. And so, and you can only choose one of those tension points at once. So if you're feeling, if you let's use the analogy of playing a game of soccer or playing a game of football. If you're never able to keep the ball when you go up against your opponent, they always take it from you, then you need to work on the tension. You need to work on your ball skills. So pay attention to your ball skills. If you can never catch the person who's got the ball, then chances are you need to work on your speed or your fitness. So if you're in business and you're overwhelmed all the time, well, it's time to start paying attention to where is your time and energy going, and what are you spending it on, and what can you maybe let go of, stop doing, or reprioritize. If it's is it something maybe you're uncomfortable delegating? Is it that you don't know how to delegate? Are you fearful of not being seen as the performer? You've got to go deep on where is the tension and pay attention to that if you're going to try and work through it. And I just work on the one thing. It's not about, especially when you're getting close to burnout, you can't start stacking up extra work. You've got to change the way you work.
Yeah. Do you know what? That's such a lovely expression. It really, really rings true for me. And I talk about ridiculously small steps with clients, because they're so ridiculously small that you can't help but achieve them and keep, celebrating that you're doing something towards wherever it is you want to be over here, which is the whole of what you want to achieve. Work backwards. What's it going to take to get you to that point? Because with everything that's going on, as you said, especially when you're perhaps close to burnout and you need to make a change, but you feel helpless to make that change, it's what help can you find, who's going to support you, and what small thing can you focus on in that one moment that's going to start you on that change journey.
I love that, ridiculously small steps. Yeah, we call it common sense easy. It's like, it's so obvious that of course you're going to do it. So why aren't you doing it? And for those people again who are in that space of burnout, one of the first things we normally say is choose one day a week where you can book yourself an appointment, a personal appointment at 5 p.m. and leave work. So even if that personal appointment is a Netflix date or going to meet a friend or going to a gym class or whatever it is for you, but have that reason to leave work at 5 p.m. and leave your laptop at work. And if you work at home, close the door in the home office. But it's that small, commonsensically easy step. You go, of course I can just do that one day a week. Like, that's okay. And then we start from there, because that one day you'll connect with a friend, you'll go and do some exercise, you'll do something positive for you, but you'll let your brain start to recharge a little bit. And we won't go into the neuroscience in this conversation, but essentially your brain is stacking up waste products from all the hard thinking you're doing, and going and doing something else allows some of those waste products to get flushed out. So just do one small thing, and I guarantee tomorrow morning you'll come back to your desk a little bit more clear-headed.
Yes.
And if we keep just doing the one commonsensically small step, you'll become a little bit more clear-headed. And gradually over time, as you become more clear-headed, you can start to make some better choices versus being that hamster on the wheel, as you say, that it's going round and round and round delivery.
Yeah. And I love the idea that our brains percolate this stuff overnight as well. So on that day that you left at 5 o'clock and you had that overwhelmingly positive feeling because of the friend that you met or the gym class that you did, and all those fabulous endorphins and serotonin and blah blah blah, they're all released and you're feeling good, your brain will percolate that overnight, and in the morning whatever thoughts pop up for you as you wake up, because our brains are fascinating things, and I'm definitely no expert, but I do find it really amazing. It's going to say, I want more of that. I want to feel that feeling more. And the more that you do it, the more that you'll build that, I don't know if it's a ability to recognize it and do more of it for yourself.
It's a habit forming process. Yeah. And one of the challenges there's and again, I won't go into the deep science, but there's a habit cycle that we talk about, which is motivation, activation, reward. And what often we feel is that, I'm so burned out, I can't get motivated to do anything. So we say, well, what could you activate? What's a commonsensically small activation step? So it is that close the laptop at 5. It is that I choose not to eat at my desk. I'm going to go sit in the lunchroom with a couple of other people. I choose to take a walking meeting versus doing it in a stuffy meeting room. Activate something, and because as soon as you activate, you get the reward for having done it, which then reward helps supercharge motivation. And so this cycle is like hacked by, I don't need to get motivated to do something. I'll just do something smaller to get the reward, to motivate me to do something a bit bigger, to get the activation, to get the reward. And you can see how you're sort of cranking the engine by hot wiring it.
Yeah. And I think the language that you use there as well, Jimmy, is really important. I choose to go and eat my lunch elsewhere. I choose to close the laptop at 5 p.m. Not I must go and eat my lunch with somebody else. I must go and close the laptop at 5 because all you're doing then is adding extra pressure, where actually I choose to go and have my lunch with somebody else. What a difference in fact that you're giving yourself permission for a start, but you're not adding that extra stress and pressure where you're already suffering.
And make it commonsensically simple. Make it that ridiculously simple step, as you say. It doesn't need to be anything fancy. When you're on the ledge, when you're on the verge of burnout, or you're in burnout, I'm going to go to personal trainer and work out 6 times a week, and I'm going to do meditation classes, and I'm going to quit drinking cold turkey, and we do these like massive steps. They're too much. Just do something really small. Don't drink 1 day a week. Do one walk for 10 minutes, choose something. And it almost goes down to James Clear's atomic habits. If I asked you, could you do 50 push-ups? You might try, but you'll probably run out of gas. If I said, can you do 1 push-up? You'd say, yes. And then you might go, do you know what? I could probably do 2 or 3 more actually. And that is still more push-ups than trying to do 50 and failing. And
I can do 10 proper army press-ups. Does that count?
Then you're
really hard.
You're 10 ahead of me.
They are really hard to do properly, like nose to the floor. Oh dear, yes, it takes a lot of muscle building.
Good for you. That's fantastic.
I love that. Oh gosh, once again, what a lot of insight and value that you've just shared with us, Jimmy. It's been absolutely fascinating to gain your sort of take on game and leadership, and that the playing of all the different things that we do as leaders. Thank you so much for sharing. It's been a real pleasure.
No, it's been thrilling. Thank you for the opportunity to chat once again. You know, we as you say, we could probably chat for hours on this stuff. You may have detected deeply passionate about it and have spent a lot of time thinking about it. So it's easy.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think I'm okay to say that I've definitely found a kindred spirit on this stuff. So we are lucky enough to have Jimmy join us next week on Game of Leadership. So with that, have a wonderful week, Jimmy, and I'll see you next week.
Thanks so much, Paula. See you soon.
Take care. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. I always think the game episode is one of my favourites because we get a real insight to our guests' take on their ideas of how games and leadership fit together. Every one of them is different, and just when I think there isn't another take that we haven't thought of or covered, one of our guests comes up with something totally different and unique. It's really exciting. Look, now it's your turn. See what you think, see what resonated with you most, and as always, I encourage you to reflect on what you've heard and see what that might mean for your leadership moving forwards. I'm Paula Eddie Wilcox, and this is Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. I really look forward to seeing you all next week. Bye for now.